Look at your dinner plate or watch a toddler violently spit out a single piece of broccoli. To us, it's just picky eating. But to your ancient ancestors, that tiny moment of disgust was a biological firewall, a life-saving mechanism engineered over millions of years. We like to imagine early humans figured out what to eat through simple trial and error. But if our ancestors had just blindly sampled random leaves or copied what wild birds and rabbits were eating, our species would have been wiped out overnight. Animals process toxins using completely different metabolic pathways. A death cap mushroom that gives a rabbit zero issues will melt a human liver in days, and some of the most lethal plants on Earth don't taste bitter at all. They taste pleasant, mild, and sweet right up until your throat swells shut or your heart stops. So, how did we survive? How did early foragers navigate a world paved with hidden botanical landmines, and even manage to transform deadly poisons into our daily staple foods? The answer isn't just a story of ancient ingenuity. It is written directly into your DNA, coded into your taste buds, and hidden inside the strange biological glitches your body experiences every single day. You've probably heard that ancient humans figured out which plants were safe through simple trial and error, that someone ate a random leaf, dropped dead, and the rest of the tribe took notes. But if we had relied purely on body counts, humanity would have gone extinct long ago. The reality was a brutal, microscopic biological war. Take raw wild taro. It doesn't taste bad at first, but the moment you bite down, it unleashes thousands of microscopic, double-pointed crystals called rhaphides. These tiny needles act like firing syringes, tearing into the soft tissue of your mouth and injecting inflammatory proteins that can swell your airway shut in minutes. Or consider monkshood. Its active toxin, aconitine, forcibly locks open the sodium channels in your nerve membranes. It begins as a faint tingling on your lips, which quickly transforms into a sensation, like freezing lava pouring down your esophagus, followed by total numbness, blinding flashes of light, and fatal heart failure. To survive, our ancestors couldn't just wait until a plant was swallowed. They had to decode chemical red flags. Crushing raw poison hemlock, for example, breaks open volatile compounds that stink sharply of stale mouse urine and damp animal fur. It was an immediate biological alarm bell, warning foragers long before a lethal leaf ever touched their lips. Everything changed when ancient humans stopped guessing. Instead of relying on luck, foraging bands engineered a standardized evaluation protocol, a methodical screening process developed over millennia to evaluate nature's deadliest weapons long before a plant ever reached the stomach. First came the smear and crush test, rubbing smashed sap onto the tender skin of the wrist to watch for chemical burns while sniffing for sharp, pungent red flags. If the skin showed no reaction, a tiny fragment touched the lips, then rested on the tip of the tongue for 15 minutes to screen for numbing or burning. Next was mastication and expulsion, chewing the plant, holding it, and spitting it completely clear. Only then came microingestion, swallowing a single cooked pea-sized portion, followed by an 8-hour fast to watch for fever, cramps, or irregular heartbeats. And if a mildly toxic plant was all they had, they engineered a chemical workaround. Ancient humans consumed specific mineral clays like bentonite right along with bitter wild greens. On a microscopic level, these negatively charged clays acted like chemical sponges, binding to positively charged toxic alkaloids inside the gut and sweeping them harmlessly out of the body before they could ever enter the bloodstream. In northern Australia, Aboriginal groups in Arnhem Land spent tens of thousands of years turning a lethal hazard into a daily superfood, the cycad nut. Packed with psychocin, a severe neurotoxin that causes liver failure and brain damage, eating a raw nut is suicide. But early humans didn't avoid it. They engineered it. They roasted and cracked the nuts, placing them in woven bags submerged in fast-flowing streams to leach out the water-soluble toxins. When water wasn't enough, they buried them in earth-lined pits for weeks, relying on anaerobic bacterial fermentation to break down the deadly molecules. This ancient chemical warfare software is still running inside your body right now. Ever wonder why children throw tantrums over broccoli? It isn't just picky eating. Toddlers have a higher density of taste buds and a hyperactive bitter receptor gene called TAS2R38. In the wild, a roaming child couldn't tell a wild green from a lethal nightshade. So extreme bitterness served as an automated genetic poison shield. The same goes for first trimester morning sickness. During early organ development, an embryo is hypervulnerable to plant mutagens. The mother's body intentionally lowers its toxicity threshold, using nausea to force a bland, safe diet. Even if cilantro tastes like soap to you, That's just your evolutionary armor showing. A variation in the OR6A2 gene lets you detect aldehydes, the exact defensive chemical deterrent emitted by stink bugs and toxic leaves. Your body isn't glitching. It's just running 30,000 years of survival code in a modern world. 49,000 years ago, in El Cedron Cave, Neanderthals weren't just screening out bitter plants, they were using them as a pharmacy. Analysis of fossilized dental plaque revealed microfossils of bitter yarrow and chamomile, alongside poplar wood bark, the natural source of aspirin and even penicillium mold. Our ancient cousins knowingly overrode their own poison alarms to self-medicate. Because the line between poison, medicine, and food was razor thin. Raw bitter cassava yields up to 1,000 milligrams of hydrogen cyanide per kilogram, chemically equivalent to swallowing industrial cyanic acid, suffocating your cellular respiration within 30 minutes. Drinking raw, unleached acorn paste is like pouring leather-tanning chemicals down your esophagus, causing acute kidney failure. And ricin, a fatal dose, is smaller than a single grain of table salt. When weaponized, these compounds were nightmare fuel. In ancient Sardinia, victims of ritual execution were forced to drink hemlock water dropwort. Its neurotoxin locked their facial muscles into a permanent, terrifying, wide-mouthed grin while they suffocated fully conscious, giving us the literal origin of the sardonic smile. Yet, toxic plants weren't just feared or weaponized. They were targeted. By engineering multi-step chemical protocols, early humans didn't just survive nature's most lethal weapons. They turned plants like cassava, acorns, and cycads into the foundational staple superfoods that built human civilization. What sounds like ancient tribal folklore, rubbing toxic sap onto an inner wrist, holding a bitter leaf against the tip of your tongue, or King Mithridates microdosing lethal poisons to render himself immune to assassins, isn't primitive superstition. It was empirical science in its rawest, most visceral form. When a dermatologist places a chemical patch on your skin to test for severe allergies today, they are executing the exact same dermal screening protocol our ancestors developed hundreds of thousands of years ago. When medical researchers perform microdosing trials to find a safe drug threshold, or allergists use oral immunotherapy to retrain a child's immune system, they are simply refining those ancient playbooks of survival. Our high-tech laboratories didn't invent these principles from scratch. We just gave our ancestors' survival instincts a lab coat and a modern name. So the next time you gag at a bitter vegetable, suffer through morning sickness or recoil from a sharp, pungent smell, remember, you aren't experiencing an annoyance. You are running a 500,000-year-old biological security system designed to keep you alive. Drop a modern human into an ancient forest today, and they'd likely die eating a lethal deathcap mushroom just because they saw a rabbit eat one first. But place an ancient forager in a modern grocery aisle, and their TAS2R bitter receptors would redline right at the produce counter, convinced our cultivated vegetables were chemical hazards. Human civilization wasn't built by running away from nature's toxins. It was built by the brave ancestors who leaned in, mapped the invisible chemical landscape, and learned how to tame the poison.